this very concerning development that took place on Tuesday with 10 Israeli soldiers being killed in a single attack in northern Gaza. This was an ambush, and it has turned out to be one of the deadliest days for the Israeli forces since the ground operations began on the 27th of October. Now, there are many who are saying that this essentially shows that Israel may be quite far from achieving its stated goal of finishing Hamas, contrary to some of the claims that have been made in the recent past by the Israeli forces, the defense minister and even the prime minister, who've been saying it is the beginning of the end of Hamas. In fact, Hamas too has issued a statement reacting to the Tuesday ambush that left 10 of your soldiers dead, saying, you know, the longer you stay there, the greater the bill of your deaths and losses will be. And you will emerge from it carrying the tale of disappointment and loss. Your thoughts on how much of a setback this really is for Israel?
It's not a setback at all. And in that sense, as I'm listening to whatever comes out of Hamas, you and I, Neha, I think we can take that with a little grain of salt when they put anything out. It has been what they're going to call their only success until now from October 7th. And I can't think of October 7th as a success in that barbaric attack. But let's address specifically the events of Tuesday. Neha, you and I have spoken here over the last months over what Hamas has prepared up front inside the Gaza Strip. They prepared the city of Gaza, all of these different neighborhoods, as urban defense systems. They prepared within them booby-trapped arenas. And I'm not saying that Tuesday was not hard. It was hard. It is sad. But Tuesday was an event that I have to say, as a military person, I'm more surprised it didn't happen before. It's not an ambush. It's those different arenas of booby traps that Hamas have been placing in a variety of places. And until now, systematically, slowly, working carefully, we managed as a military to avoid, to take them away. We've had other casualties, smaller amounts, and in this one, it was a harder one. But as we go forward, this is one event, and that one event, as it went on, the commanders immediately are replaced. They're continuing in the action. This is the only way to get to this infrastructure, that horrible word, to be able to destroy these Hamas capabilities, and doing so in that systematic, careful way. There will be casualties. It was a hard day, but this is not any kind of change, not in Israel's plan, not in where we're going. And yes, we are already at the stage that in the northern Gaza Strip, the only area where there is even this kind of capability is in this neighborhood of Shaja'iyah, and they're going to continue to try, but this is they're talking, we're acting.
They're talking, Israel is acting, you say. Of course, it's a fact that 116 Israeli Defense Forces soldiers have been killed in the Gaza combat thus far, but as many would argue that this number is a pretty small one compared to the Palestinian death toll that has been put out by Hamas. At last count, according to the health ministry run by Hamas, it was 18,600, including thousands of women and children. Let me now go across to our other Israeli guest on the panel. Yeshaka Rosenman, you know, reacting to Tuesday's developments, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, he told the soldiers actually over radio in Gaza, we are continuing until the end, until victory, until Hamas is annihilated. I say this in the face of great pain, but also in the face of international pressures. Nothing will stop us. The question is, even as Israel says that it's determined to press on with this fight against Hamas, to what extent has it really been successful in achieving its stated military objectives, given that the war has now gone on for well over 2 months? Not only is international pressure on Israel mounting by the day, there is a growing sense that Washington, Israel's closest ally, is now running out of patience, going by the statements that have been made by none other than President Biden himself, who said a couple of days ago that Israel is fast losing the support of the world because of the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. So even as Prime Minister Netanyahu says nothing will stop us, is it not going to get tougher and tougher for Israel in the days ahead, especially given that the claim that Hamas is on its knees may not really be true?
So, good evening. So, the way I've seen military analysts say is that 2 out of 5 of Hamas's battalions have been almost completely decimated. They have lost, according to Israeli, the most conservative estimates, well over 7,000 of their soldiers. That's quite a bit. And the ratio of civilians to armed fighters is one of the lowest in such conflicts anywhere in the world. It was between 2 or 3 civilians for every militant, so that's a very low ratio. As far as the objectives of the war, it's the way most Israelis would see it, and I think this is the way Prime Minister Netanyahu sees it. It's a sink or swim situation. We are not fighting Hamas to extract revenge or to show bravado. It is simply to ensure the fact that October 7th will never happen again. And the only way that we think we can do that is by eliminating Hamas, by removing it from power, removing all its military capabilities, and what the day after will look like, whether Israel will control the Gaza Strip or some other force, that remains to be seen. But it is also clear that their education system and their media must be completely redone. It is, you can see on sites such as Palestinian Media Watch or Memory, the kind of wild incitement, genocidal incitement that they preach on their schools, most of which are run by the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA and the media. So all in all, the objective is to eliminate Hamas, and it's sink or swim. We can't just call for a ceasefire, for an immediate ceasefire, such as the radical activists in Washington were calling for, are simply Hamas. They are echoing Hamas's demands, because a ceasefire means, in essence, that Hamas will remain in power and simply build up capabilities until they attack again. We retaliate again, and they again calls for a ceasefire. So it means perpetuating the ongoing conflict. The most humane solution, as horrible as it is to say this, the most humane solution is to continue the war until Hamas is eliminated, and do your best to have a new leadership in Gaza that actually cares for the lives of its own citizens and Israelis, and hopefully someone will care for the lives of Israelis as well. When President Biden talks of indiscriminate bombing, I don't know what he is referring to. Israel goes to extraordinary lengths to ensure that civilians are not harmed. This is a very densely populated area. And as I said, the ratio of civilians to armed combatants is very low. And all I can say is that, so if you see these radical protesters who are protesting in Washington, and were basically following President Biden around anywhere he went, shouting, calling him Genocide Joe, and we accuse you of genocide and things like that. These radical people are a very worrisome sign, because they control the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, who are, in the young generation, have complete prominence in the Democratic Party. We see all these radical universities from Harvard down, from the top, the best universities, all the way down. They were equivocating about, can you call for genocide of Jews, can you not? In the Democratic Party, there is also a caucus, a large electorate who are very powerful among the activists. I don't know how large they are in population, but they're very powerful among the activists. People such as Linda Sarsour and Nihad Awad, the leader of CARE, the radical Muslim representatives in America, who are in line with Hamas. Nihad Awad, it can be found online. His response to the October 7th massacre was complete approval. So it's a very worrying situation that these are people that Biden has to consider when he comes for re-election.
You can call them Muslim activists, but fact of the matter is that these statements have come from none other than your closest and staunchest ally, the President of the United States, who many believe is running out of patience. You say the civilian to combatants ratio is very low. I'm not sure how many will agree with that, because if 18,600 Palestinians at last count were killed, we are told 60% of them were women and children. And also, I don't know how many will agree with your choice of words when you say that the most humane way of dealing with this situation is to continue the war till Hamas is wiped out. As a matter of fact, let me quickly tell you and the viewers that in a televised address, Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh has said any future arrangement in Gaza without Hamas is a delusion and a mirage. But let me now go across to Lev Aaron. Lev, some very interesting facts have come to light in the last 24 hours. You know, of course, apart from the statements that we've heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Hamas leader who I just quoted, there are some interesting polls that have been conducted in Gaza and in Israel. And these suggest a clear hardening of entrenched positions on both sides. While you have 90% of Israelis who believe that this war to crush Hamas must carry on, no matter how many Palestinians are killed, no matter how many troop casualties Israel suffers, and no matter how much international pressure there may be for a ceasefire. On the other side, you actually have a poll that suggests, this is a poll by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research that suggests that since this war began and as more and more Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli counteroffensive, Hamas has actually seen a surge in the support it enjoys amongst Palestinians. It's gone up significantly in the last few weeks alone. And then there is a very interesting statement by the Qatari Prime Minister who has said death and destruction in Gaza could radicalize an entire generation. So my question to you, Lev, is simply this. Even as Israel says, we are pressing ahead with this war because we need to wipe out Hamas, is it really moving towards its stated objectives in the right fashion, or could Israel's war strategy end up blowing up in its face?
Okay, let's start with the polls. We see that even in Europe, people are quite forgetting the atrocities of October 7th. And Israel needs to prove again and again its bona fide of its democratic nature. So if in Europe this is the situation, I'm sure that in the West Bank and Gaza, they face what is going on, and in the West Bank they watch the Arab channels and also Arab Facebook and TikTok and so on. So I'm sure that what they see is terrible views and they forget what happened on October 7th. So this is like, for one, I'm not surprised that among Arabs in the West Bank, there is more support for the Hamas right now. The second thing is that we need not to forget that quite a few dozens of Hamas decided to stop fighting. And also we see more voices inside Gaza that they are asking Hamas, why are you looting the trucks with the medical equipment, with food and so on. So I agree with you that I don't think these voices, they're like the majority of Gazans right now. But when you live under a dictatorship like in Gaza, or even like the West Bank, you want first to see who is the victor, who won the war, and only then you voice your real opinion, or not your real opinion. So I think that right now, the verdict of Hamas in northern Gaza is done and dusted. They lost it. Also in Shajaiya, which is a traumatic place for us Israelis, and not only in this war, only in the last war with Hamas. So North Gaza, Hamas has lost them, even if it will take a bit more time. And about southern Gaza and Han Yunis and Rafah, we will have to see. Thank you.